Face front. Lift your head. You're on the winning team. Nuff Said. You belong, you belong, you belong, you belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along, march along, march along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society.
Face front, true believers. It is the Merry Marvel Marching Society podcast, issue number 1, an independent podcast done in the mighty Marvel tradition. Oh yes, Nuff Said. Hello, it is the Merry Marvel Marching Society podcast, issue number 1, and I am your host, Jeff Sanguis. Welcome aboard. Now, let me explain to you exactly what it is I'm doing here, if by chance the title didn't give it all away. This is an all Marvel podcast, cover to cover. This is not a podcast for fans of the distinguished competition. No, this is for Marvel fans, because I believe that Marvel is no dark horse in the race for comics excellence. They have been winning that race as the favorite year after year after year. And I've never been one to worry about my image, because as a Marvel fan, everyone knows that I am a winner, because I believe that Marvel is more powerful, more explosive than dynamite. Yes, Marvel is the best comic book company in the world. And that's all there is to it. So, there you go. And IDW. There, I said it. I could not come up with anything for IDW, but I think you got the point of where I was going with all that. So yeah. Today, what I want to do is just kind of let you know what it is I plan to do with this podcast, and we'll also talk a little bit about current issues of Marvel Comics that have come out, what's going on with the Now Initiative, and I'm also going to step back into the Silver Age and talk to you a little bit about Astonishing Tales. Right about now, though, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Jeff Sanguis, and I have been a comic book collector for the majority of my life. And while I do collect a lot of different types of comic books, the bulk of it all is Marvel. I got my first comic book probably around 73, 74, and it was a DC book, and I'll admit it. And but it didn't resonate with me until some years later, around 1977, stumbling upon Spider-Man and just being blown away by the character. I probably was already into Spider-Man because of the old kids show on PBS. Electric Company had Spider-Man live shorts in it, which are great, and you really need to go on YouTube and look those up. They're hilarious. You'll see a very young Morgan Freeman hanging out with Spider-Man, so go check that out. But I digress. I started reading on a regular basis comic books around 1977. Started to get my hands on Spider-Man comics, or whatever other comics I could find. I was also collecting the Star Wars comics. They started up around then as well. And but still, I wasn't quite the comic book collector. I was just, I would find copies where I could, either like in a 3-pack at a J.C. Penney, or on the little metal rack spinning around at the party store across the street from my house. Then around 1981 is when everything changed. I had discovered the X-Men through a friend at my school I went to. The X-Men, Daredevil, got really big into those books, and he told me something that blew my mind, that there were comic book stores dedicated to comic books. I couldn't believe this. So I convinced my dad to drive me out to this comic book store called Comics Archives, which actually closed its doors about 2 years ago now, which was a very sad thing. But so back around 1981, I begged my dad, please take me to this store, Comics Archives. It was a little ways from my house, not too far, but it was a good drive. But Pops agreed, and we drove out there, and it was a small shop. It wasn't large by any means, but I wouldn't have known it at the time. I'd never been to a comic book store before, and I walked through the door, and there was that aroma of the old book, of that paper, that newsprint, and to my right, the whole side of that wall was just filled with racks of comic books, like all these comics, and down the middle of the store facing either direction were long white boxes just filled with these back issues. And then there was the counter. Behind the counter were these books, these wonderful, amazing books from years past with these astronomical prices that just blew my mind. Like, a comic book could cost that much money. It threw me for a loop. And so I immediately went over to the wall, and I grabbed some Uncanny X-Men off the wall, and then I started flipping through the boxes. I think my dad pointed out, like, these are older books in these boxes, and I actually picked up X-Men number 8. Now, I'm not talking about the 90s relaunch. Like I said, this is back in 1981, so we're talking the 60s. I picked up X-Men number 8, the first appearance of Eunice the Untouchable, and I got that for 90 cents out of the box. It was a beat-up copy. It was a beater, but you know what? Even today, find me a beater of X-Men number 8 for 90 cents. So that just was a cool time. The explosion of prices really hadn't happened yet. But anyways, that's besides the point. So ever since 1981, I have been a true comic book collector, hitting the comic book stores, keeping up to date on what's coming out, getting my books every week on New Comic Book Day. And like I said, for me, pretty much the entire time, it has been it's been Marvel. Marvel all the way. The Marvel Universe just appeals to me more. And so, seeing that as my first book was a DC book, and, I dug it, but, it didn't really push me to seek out more. And then when I found Spider-Man, that's when I was like, more comics, please. It leads me to believe that let me say, I used to work in a comic book store for a little while, but I can't remember now. It's about maybe I worked there for like a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not sure. I was there for a little while, and I discovered something. There are your Marvel people, and there are your DC people, and yes, they will cross over and buy books here and there from either side. But truly, when you go to grab their pulls out, you see a stack of DC or a stack of Marvel. So, perhaps we are born this way, people. Accept us. I'm born a Marvel. Okay. Anyways, where the heck was I going with that? Okay, anyway. But I also want to point out that I am a humongous Marvel fan, and I will defend Marvel, but I am also not just... I'm not a Marvel slappy to the point where I'm an apologist for anything they do. So just so you know, this will be an objective podcast. Because Marvel has done some crappy things over the year, in addition to all the amazing, marvelous things they have done as well. So, there's a lot that happened in the 90s. On both sides, in all aspects of comic books. Marvel and DC. Oof, there was some stuff in the 90s I can't stand. But that's not, that's besides the point. I guess what I'm getting at is, don't worry, I'm not a Marvel slappy. I'm not going to try and sell you on Marvel books. Just to do it. I'm not going to try and tell you that you got to go pick this up and pick this up and pick this up. I'm not a slappy for Marvel. I'm going to objectively tell you that this is some great stuff you should check out, and you know what? This is what I thought of this, and maybe you should steer clear of it if you feel the same way I do. So, just want to get that out there as well. An objective Marvel podcast. Something else I want to mention is also, this is not the podcast for the speculator. If you like to slab your books in plastic and then try to figure out how much they're going to be worth in 5 years and get them on eBay, if you're hoping I'm going to try and tell you what's going to be the hot book to buy in the next month because it's going to be worth $1 gazillion, I'm not going to do that, because ultimately I don't care. I do enjoy as a collector when I find out that one of the books that I own have jumped in value. And let's face it, some of the books that are valued have some classic moments in them, and I love a good classic moment, a first appearance of a character, or perhaps some type of pivotal change. Obviously, I love those books, and those books usually end up being expensive, but I will seek out the cheapest way to get my hands on that issue, because I like to read my books. I like to hold my books in my hand, and this definitely is a podcast for people who love to read their comics and love comics that have been read. There's nothing cooler than picking up a book and seeing the dog-eared corners of it and knowing that some kid back in 1967 was carrying around this copy of the Fantastic Four to school back and forth every day. Maybe he even folded it and put it in his damn back pocket. I love those beater books. But hey, you know what? If you want that near mint copy, that's cool as well. Like I said, I'm just not going to try and speculate for you how much it's going to be worth. Don't care. Want to put it in a box and keep it until I die. Then you can bury me with my goddamn comics. All right. So that being said, what do you say we start getting into some Marvel talk? No more about me. It's time to talk Marvel. Currently in the world of Marvel, the Marvel Now initiative has been in full swing for a few months now. It's been going pretty well, and it's not a reboot, not a relaunch, but basically I think Marvel sought out an opportunity to make a good jumping on point for new fans. The Avengers movie, while I'm sure they hoped for and kind of expected it to be successful, they probably weren't expecting what occurred. That movie was huge last year, just gigantic, and it brought in so many new fans of the characters, and therefore it's drawing them towards the comic books themselves, what inspired these amazing movies. And so Marvel probably took a look at that and said, now's a good time to put some titles out there, make some storylines that are just starting up. That'll be easy to jump into. You won't need a lot of backstory. You're going to get it all right there. Not to mention, too, I think it's easier for new comic book fans, especially people that might not understand the medium. When they walk into a store, they don't want to see Captain America number 622, because then what hits them is, well, do I need the other 621 issues? So Marvel's smart, they throw out another issue 1, another issue 2, and then it's easier. It's like, okay, well, this is issue 1, oh, this is issue 3, and you have the other 2 issues right here. Great, I can jump into this story. So pretty much that's what's going on with the Marvel Now. I know some people frown upon the constant number ones, volume 4, 5, 6, 7. Ultimately, though, they always seem to swing back around and find a way to return to original numbering. In the long run, it's nitpicky, and I can see the argument in the debate, and I've enjoyed the discussions with other fellow fans about the relaunches and renumbering of series, but it doesn't really matter to me in the long run, as long as every month I'm still getting my favorite characters in their titles being put out into the shelf for me to read. If it says number 1 or number 1000, what do I care, as long as inside's a great story with a great character that I love. And you know what else? There are plenty of times where I have found myself in situations where I'm hanging out with people, like at my job or something like that, and hey, I'm a nerd. I like talking about nerd things. I like talking about Star Wars or comic books, Marvel comics, obviously. And I can't find anyone to talk to. So if a Marvel Now initiative or the Distinguished Competitions, whatever 52 thing they're doing, creates new comic book fans, so be it. That's cool by me. Gives me some new people to talk to. Because I like talking to people. Obviously, I like talking to a microphone, hence the podcast. So, the Marvel Now initiative. Lots of things have been going on with that, and a lot of books got new teams put together for them, creative-wise, as well as the characters within. That's another cool thing about it as well. It kind of threw me a little bit because I was really enjoying like Jonathan Hickman's run on Fantastic Four and what Brian Michael Bendis had done for years with the Avengers. And part of the Marvel Now, while it was a relaunch of sorts for the new fans and a good jumping on point for them, they also did something for the true fans, and that was to suggest that, hey, you know what? You've been reading Hickman's Fantastic Four. Would you like to see what he could do with the Avengers? And Matt Fraction has been busy with the X-Men, but do you want to see what he could do elsewhere? Do you want to see what Bendis could do with the X-Men? I mean, Bendis has been on the Avengers for years and years and years. Well, here's Marvel's other flagship team, the X-Men. I mean, the X-Men are huge, and they gave Bendis that. Now he's running that show, and there's been some really cool things. So that in itself too was cool that they did. That they gave us an opportunity to see what these creative teams, these writers and these artists could do teaming up and moving to new books. So that was cool as well. It kind of scared me a bit. I was like, oh man, I don't want to see what someone else can do with the Fantastic Four. I want more Hickman Fantastic Four. And by all means, I still want more Hickman Fantastic Four. But what he's doing with the Avengers is really cool. It's a departure. It's different from what Bendis did. And then you go look at what Bendis is doing with the X-Men. He's taken that flair of his, that dialogue-driven story, and he's applied to the X-Men. And it's cool because the personality is there. I like the personalities adding, because that was one thing that I thought Chris Claremont did back in his classic run on the X-Men decades ago, was that there was some character there. There was some personality there. There was some interaction as a family that, I've always dug. And and what Mark Waid's doing with the Fantastic Four is cool. Mark Waid, what he's doing with Daredevil is great, and that itself will have to be its own show, because that Daredevil deserved his own show, and I'll get to that at some point. But anyways, but what I really want to touch on as far as Marvel Now goes is what Rick Remender is doing with Uncanny Avengers. The only Avengers book that wasn't handed over. Oh no, actually, Secret Avengers and Uncanny Avengers. Forget that. Anyways, I was going to say the only Avengers book that wasn't handed over to Jonathan Hickman was Uncanny, but there's also Secret Avengers. Nick Spencer is writing that. But Uncanny Avengers, Rick Remender, he had a run with the Uncanny X-Force over the last few years that just blew my mind. I had not been reading the X-Force. Never been a big fan of Cable, 90s. And he was involved in the whole X-Force thing from back in the day. And then when they brought in the new X-Force, I picked up the first issue of it. It was all right, written by I think it was Christopher Yost was writing that. And it was cool, but at the time I was trying to not buy every single Marvel book. I was trying to watch my funds, and let's be honest with you, there was a time, and I want to return to that time, but there was a time where I bought and read every Marvel title. But then I had a change of jobs, we'll leave it at that, and tried to cut back, so I wasn't reading the X-Force. But then I was working at the comic book store, and Uncanny X-Force #1 came out, and I just decided, I'm going to read this. Why not? And I read it and was blown away. Rick Remender's writing is he's great. He reminds me a lot. He's got humor as well as strong characters. The characters are developed, they're driven, they're strong. No character dominates over the other one in his writing. And like I said, there's a sense of humor to it. It's a realism about things almost, to that extent of how these characters would react. There's a lot of emotion. And then you could say that about any writer, but he really nailed it well with that book. And so I decided, whatever Rick Remender does next, I'm following him there. And I have been. And now Rick has been given Uncanny X-Force. And let's talk a little bit about that. Actually, you know what? I just kind of hit it in my brain, just pinpointed it, what it is about Rick Remender's writing that I love. And that is, he is dealing with super-powered characters, superheroes and supervillains, but he's dealing with these super-powered characters, but he still finds a way to make them feel vulnerable. And that is a hard thing to do for most comic writers. How do you find a way to seriously make your characters seem vulnerable when they are so powerful to begin with? And he does this through that emotion. He does that through their emotional connections to each other within the story, as well as physically vulnerable. But it's more about that mental vulnerability, because he makes them human, and that's what I love about Rick Remender's writing. That's what I was trying to say, and now I said it. Okay, now let's talk about the Uncanny Avengers. Okay, Uncanny Avengers was a book designed to bring about some type of formal resolution and what's the word I'm looking for? last year's Avengers versus X-Men ended with Cyclops killing Professor Xavier and going to prison for that. If you didn't know that, spoilers, sorry, too late. You're supposed to say spoilers before that, Jeff. Well, I just talked in the third person, which makes me a jerk for spoiling things as well as a jerk for talking in the third person. But anyways, so after the Avengers versus X-Men, they wanted some type of formal resolution to it all where it shows the bond between regular superhero and mutant superhero. So Captain America set out to create an Avengers team that would show that the Avengers and the mutant superheroes could be one team, work together, and whatever. So, what do? You get Uncanny Avengers, which starred Captain America, Scarlet Witch, and Thor, which have always been known as Avengers. And obviously the Scarlet Witch was a mutant Avenger. And then on the mutant side, so to speak, of things, the X-Men added side of things, was Wolverine, which obviously Wolverine has been Avenger for some time now. But you also throw into the mix Rogue and Havoc, which is Scott Summers, Cyclops' younger brother. And as a matter of fact, Captain America, who was on the team, says, "I'm not leading this team." He's like, "Alex, Havoc, you're leading this team. We want a mutant to lead this team. We need to..." It's almost like a PR move by the Avengers after the X-Men Avengers were to say, "Hey, listen, things went sour. The X-Men, the mutants look pretty bad." And Captain America's like, "We got to do something to help that image." So, big PR move by Captain America to help rehabilitate the image of mutants to the world. And so, therefore, you get the Uncanny Avengers. And so it starts off with those 6 as the team. And Remender and artist John Cassaday, who is an amazing artist. You might remember John Cassaday's work on Captain America way back in the day. He did a run of Astonishing X-Men with Joss Whedon. That was great. The writing and the art in that book was just stupendous. I'm a big fan of John Cassaday's art. It's hyper realistic. It's really cool artwork, but it actually has put this book back a little bit because I guess it takes some... He's just not good. He's been doing a lot of covers for a while lately, and he hasn't really been on a regular book for some time that I recall. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that getting the book out on time is hard to do because he takes a while. So as a matter of fact, with issue 6, I believe, John Cassaday is going to be replaced with Daniel Acuna. So, and his artwork's great as well. But anyways, blah, blah, blah. Uncanny Avengers, that's the 6 of them. And the first arc of, was it 4 issues? Yeah. The first arc, they are battling against the Red Skull, which is just awesome. I love it when a classic villain is the villain in the book. I'm a big fan of all the villains came out in the Silver Age and the Bronze Age. I love when writers obviously respect the history of comics and know their books, and they go back and they say, well, I want to use this classic character. And so Remender got lucky. He was like, hey man, can I use the Red Skull? They're like, sure. So he got the Red Skull, and what he did was so cool because it's just quirky. It's got a Bronze Age feel to it. It's lately a lot of books in the last 10 years. I also want to call the last 10 years the new golden age of Marvel Comics, because ultimately Marvel really set the standard in the Silver Age. They came to be called Marvel Comics, and all the really classic 99%, with the exception of Captain America, of the classic Marvel characters all were born out of the Silver Age. So Marvel and the Golden Age, you really don't put those two together too often in the history of comics. You can, but you don't. So I'm going to say the last 10 years has been like the new Golden Age of Marvel Comics. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that finally the writing and the artwork have really, really come together on the same level. And what I mean by that is, well, you know what? I'm not going to get into all that right now. We're talking Uncanny Avengers. I will save that for another podcast. So, there I was going off on a tangent. And where was I? Oh, yeah. So, in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of great books. A lot of great books have come out. But a lot of them really go sometimes so realistic. Well, as realistic as you can get in the comic world. I'm going to cough. Yes. Where am I going? Okay. The Bronze Age of comics, it was like the 70s and the 80s. The storylines were so wild, so fantastic. They didn't really spend too much time trying to explain and make you understand why this could happen and make sure that everything connected in such a way that it could happen. It was sometimes just some fantastic over-the-top stories. And I think in the last 10 years, you're still getting these fantastic stories and some over-the-top stuff. But ultimately, it seems like there's this realism that's come into writing, which I love. I think it's great. But at the same time, I like an over-the-top, goofy-ass story. So what do we get? We get, like I said, Charles Xavier died during Avengers vs. X-Men. And his funeral takes place in Uncanny X-Men, or Uncanny Avengers #1. So, after the funeral, Charles Xavier's body is laid to rest in a tomb. But laid to rest is merely a term that does not apply here. It's a phrase that does not apply here because the Red Skull sends his S-Men to steal the body of Charles Xavier. And in doing so, they have a battle with the Scarlet Witch and Rogue, and they get captured by the S-Men as well. But that's besides the point. What happens at the end of the first issue, the last page, just is crazy. It's great. It's awesome. It's one of those big full splash page drawings, one whole page dedicated to it, and it set the tone for this series. It let you as the reader know that this was going to be a crazy, fun, wild, over-the-top type of comic book experience, because there is the Red Skull. The corpse of Charles Xavier is lying there. The top of the skull is removed and pulled open. The Red Skull is holding Charles Xavier's brain, his bloody brain, in his hand, and he's holding it up. And he exclaims, "With the brain of Charles Xavier, the Red Skull will eradicate the mutant menace." He takes Charles Xavier's brain and puts it in his own so that he can use his telepathic powers. I don't even understand and know how that's going to work. It doesn't matter because he just does it. Because you know what? It's a comic book and it's a fun one. What an awesome story. So now Charles Xavier, whose history, if you're familiar with it, was he wanted to see peace and harmony between mutants, Homo superior, and humans, Homo sapiens. That's what he strove for. That was the Charles Xavier dream. That dream is being crapped all over by the Red Skull, who's now using Charles's powers to create riots, to cause humans to attack and murder anybody who has a mutant gene in them. And it's just, the next 4 issues are great. The storyline is awesome. The end of issue 4 is another crazy, crazy ending that will make you go, whoa, awesome. I'm not even going to tell you what that is. No spoiler there. Because I want you to go out there and buy the first 4 issues of Uncanny Avengers by Rick Remender and John Cassaday. Go find them. You know what? As far as I can tell, they are still 1 through 4 are still available at cover price at most comic book stores. It's not one of those books that has gone nuts in value because there was a lot of copies put out. Marvel knew it was going to be a big title, and there's a lot of them out there. It really got ordered well by the comic stores, so everyone seems to have these in stock. So you can find all 4 issues without a problem. And I'm telling you right now, you will not be disappointed. If everything I've just told you sounds interesting, you won't be disappointed. If that doesn't sound interesting to you, you'll be so bummed. I don't know. I think everyone should read the book. It's a great book. Writing's there, the artwork's there, the characters are there. It's really cool. Alright, so that was just a little bit about current issues of Marvel Comics I want to jump into right there and maybe steer you in a direction of something you might like. Now I want to step back in time to the Silver Age and talk about Astonishing Tales. Hey, True Believer, that is the end of Chapter 1 of the first issue of the Merry Marvel Marching Society podcast. Chapter 2, where I talk about Roy Thomas and Wally Wood's Astonishing Tales, will be coming shortly. If you would like to know when that's going to happen, all you got to do is go like the podcast on Facebook.com. It's at Facebook.com/MMMS podcast. That's Facebook.com/MS podcast. Or you can also write me at MMMSpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you're thinking, any ideas you might have, any topics you want me to bring up, any comic books you want me to talk about. I will do so as long as it's Marvel. So, thanks a lot for stopping by. You are now a member of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. In the immortal words of one Stan Lee, Excelsior!
Stand a little straighter, walk a little prouder, be an innovator, laugh a little louder, stroke a refrigerator, we can show you how to. And when will you be then? You belong, you belong, you belong, you belong to the Merry Marvel Marching Society. March along, march along, march along to the song of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. If you growl, if you groan, with the dour, sour outlook, if you howl, if you moan, you can lose your sour throat, but keeping trim and in